We have a couple clips of Republicans getting shut down on CNN for their defenses of Trump in an attempt to spread propaganda about FEMA and these tragedies that I thought we could take a look at and would make for some insightful conversation. So I've lined these up, and as always, we'll knock them down one by one.
Boils my blood because I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I remember when Donald Trump came down to Puerto Rico and threw paper towels at us.
How could you forget?
Exactly. And so when he makes up out of whole cloth these ridiculous lies about the administration, which Republican governors have actually said, no, they are getting what they need from this administration. We have talked to President Biden. We have talked to Vice President Harris. They are responding absolutely adequately, more than adequately. We're getting what we need. Meanwhile, when Trump was president, he gutted FEMA. He did not want to give California the aid that they needed from wildfires until they had to show him a map that the places that needed the help were Republican. It is absolutely insanity what this man is doing. He's not just politicizing the storm, but he's putting people's lives in danger.
So I actually wanted to start here because there's a lot of right-wing propaganda circling about the Biden administration response to this hurricane, despite multiple Republican governors saying that Biden is giving them literally everything they need, that they couldn't even ask for more. Meanwhile, when Trump was in office, he refused 99% of relief aid to North Carolina after a similar hurricane, refused to send relief aid to California after wildfire, refused relief to Puerto Rico. And this is the newest lie, right? That FEMA doesn't have the money because they gave it all to migrants. Well, we're going to debunk that also, but this lie is hilarious because Trump actually gutted FEMA funding when he was in office. He cut the budget as well as reallocating almost $300 million from it to, you guessed it, directly to fund migrant programs. So when I tell you that every accusation is a confession from MAGA, this is exactly what I mean. But as to the lie that MAGA is pretending that FEMA is giving so much money to migrants, that leaving them underfunded, they can't even help their citizens. Well, Mayorkas, the one that they're circling this lie about, says that not only do they have enough to handle this disaster moving forward, they're expecting another hurricane, or actually a flurry of hurricanes. And if this happens, they might not make it through the season because of Congress, which the House is the one who passes our budget, the Republican House, keep that in mind, has only passed temporary smaller budget plans because Republicans don't want to come to the table and pass a full budget without getting ridiculous ass added into it. So what he's saying is that Congress needs to pass a full budget. But because MAGA doesn't ever watch these things, doesn't ever do fact check, they're listening to like one line that is being snipped and put on Twitter to where they're like, well, if they're underfunded, it must be the migrants, right? What happened actually is that House Republicans need to get off their hands and sign a budget into law, which is like their biggest responsibility, by the way. But rather than blame Republicans, of course, MAGA would turn this on migrants.
You know, I think there's legitimate
but he's basically
political
trolling
conversations to be
the
had
disaster.
here.
He's basically trolling the disaster, relief and recovery. I mean, he's not really like adding anything to it. He's basically just making stuff up for political reasons. No.
Well, I mean, his campaign, as far as I know, did start a GoFundMe to raise money for victims of it. He's down there with Brian Kemp today, and he was praising Brian Kemp's actions on the recovery in Georgia, and Kemp thanked him for bringing
but he lied about Brian Kemp
I mean, look,
earlier.
Okay, I mean, look, if you guys want to say that Donald Trump is messing up the hurricane while we have a current administration, Biden, Harris, that are in office, you go ahead. I mean, it's Donald Trump. He has things to say about the things that happen in this world, and it's October of a presidential election. So I don't know what you want. What do you want him to do? Not comment on it?
Just not be sleazy, I guess.
And this is super on point. At a bare minimum, I think we should all expect our political leaders to not spread lies about tragedies for political gain. Like, is that too much to ask? Trying to turn every single tragedy into a political talking point, especially when people are still suffering from it, especially when he's the one who's done what he's accusing others of. I mean, just be honest. Don't be sleazy and help where you can rather than using people's suffering for propaganda. I think as a bare minimum, that's where we should start for our moral qualifications for the highest office in our country.
Abby, I don't see him politicizing this storm. He is down there showing that he's the leader.
But he's claiming that Biden is withholding aid because these people are, I guess, presumptively Republicans. That's just patently false.
I think President Trump is down there making a very big point and raising the flag of this state needs a lot of help. And he's making a point. The one thing that you can't accuse of him not being is a leader. And during these
But
storms, Abby,
I mean, Lieutenant Governor, with all due respect, he is lying. He is lying.
I don't see him as
He
not
is.
being consistent with the facts,
Okay.
Abby.
Trump
he wants
is
to
say-
make sure
here's what
that
Trump
every
is saying.
penny that goes to the people of North Carolina.
Here's
look,
the
we
great
know, we
irony.
know what's
Hang
happening
on a
with the
second.
border.
This is all exactly right, but I do want to start with the wild statement that was made saying, you can't say Trump is not a leader. Trump had the House and Senate for 2 years and could only get one bill passed. He couldn't even lead his own party. Trump handpicked candidates in 2022 and 90% of them lost. Trump failed hostage negotiations with Russia on multiple occasions, effectively leaving behind Americans, and then went on to free 5,000 terrorists in Afghanistan and left behind 2,500 American troops. During a pandemic, he downplayed it until the very last second when we couldn't, and then told people to inject bleach as our economy crashed and millions of people died. Trump told a far-right white supremacist group to stand back and stand by. Trump couldn't admit his loss and instead tried to rig an election that he knew was free and fair. None of these are the traits of a leader. What traits of a leader does he even possess? When has he ever been a leader? Trump was handed a golden economy, underperformed it, and then shit the bed on the first hard thing that he had to do. I wouldn't trust him to lead a pee-wee football team, let alone our country. And about the issue at hand, Trump hasn't said a single thing that doesn't align or that aligns with the facts, let alone I don't think he said one thing that doesn't, right? Republican governors are coming out and saying the exact opposite of what Trump is saying. Some have even said that he's lying. FEMA is not doing what he says it is. What has he said that was true at this point? He's just trying to use it for political gain. All the while, he's the reason that FEMA's budget was cut. Republicans are the reason that funding isn't going to FEMA right now to keep them well and funded for this entire hurricane season. They're refusing to legislate funds that would help disaster relief programs in the middle of hurricane season. And Trump is the only one who's redirected their funds from disaster relief to the southern border. But of course, MAGA doesn't care about any of this. They don't care about politics or any of that. It's just Trump win, Democrats bad. So instead, they'll just eat up his lies and propaganda.